Peace, and we're a national nonprofit that trains police agencies around the country and policing as peace officers. And so today we want to take a close look at how artificial intelligence, AI, can help transform police agencies and help transform the way they do promotions and performance in particular. And what we're hoping to do here is to provide a roadmap for agencies, a way to promote smarter leadership and make better decisions, and ultimately increase trust in our policing system using AI-powered tools. And so I'm here with Michael Anderson. Say hi, Mike. Michael.
Hey
He is a
everyone.
developer of AI tools who developed one of the tools we'll be talking about today. Also here we have some chiefs who were chatting a little bit earlier, who are currently using AI in their promotions processes. Now we have Jack Cawley, Chief of Castle Rock, Colorado. Hey, Jack, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And Bob Spinks, the chief of Parsons, Kansas, who is currently in a promotion cycle using AI right now that's going to wrap up on Friday, right, Bob?
Absolutely. And we've been really excited with the process so far.
Awesome. Awesome. And so thinking about today, let's start with the challenge that we're all familiar with as policing agencies. Traditional promotions and evaluations processes are time and resource intensive, and they may not get the best candidates. That's what we hear across the industry. They can eat up enormous hours and administrative resources, and they can be subjective in their criteria, leading to inconsistent standards across candidates. And so we have Jack Cawley here. Jack, do you want to say a little bit about that? I know you used AI recently in your promotions, and you're continuing to use it to do different things. How have you found it might have helped with the administrative burden and the cost burden of promotions?
Well, thank you. I think first, the important piece is that as a chief, as you're looking on who to promote within your agency, the more information you have about the candidates and the more accurate information you have about the candidates, the better. What we found was this using AI and this tool provided a very efficient way to collect that information, and we found that the information that we collected on the candidates was very accurate. Not only did we see it as accurate information based on their past performance and past behaviors, but the candidates themselves, after they reviewed the report, agreed with that. It's like, yep, that's me. That was very accurate. So it's a great tool that's easy to use. It saves time and money as far as the administrative pieces of it, and we found it to be very beneficial.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing as well. And so, AI is one of the tools, but there are a lot of new technologies that are coming in and improving legacy processes for policing agencies. So these types of these new legacy technologies are offering smart, cost-effective upgrades to the way policing agencies are doing processes. They can be voice enabled. You can have mobility, people doing things on their phones. They can streamline. You can get better outcomes, all kinds of ways that technologies are improving policing for a lot of different applications. Michael, you want to chat a little bit about how these technologies might be upgrading policing? I know you've worked in the area.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a number of ways where they're helpful. Really, first, they allow voice-enabled input, where officers can provide feedback naturally through conversation. In motion, you don't have to be behind a desk. You don't have to be typing away. It's much more fluid in terms of providing insight and feedback. Second, it's mobile accessible. And so having that freedom when you're on the go or in the vehicle, you can interact with these AI systems pretty effortlessly just using voice. Certainly, we've seen AI reduce the administrative burden. Nobody likes extra paperwork or extra admin work. And we've really seen some reduction there, especially in the context of promotions. And really, we've seen not only just AI create some efficiencies, but it also leads to better outcomes, more accurate promotion evaluations, more personalized development plans on actual performance data, which we've seen to be really powerful. And beyond that, we do see across the country that police leaders are turning to AI and experimenting. And we've also seen how it's really important to, stay modern and up to date, while also experimenting in a way that is safe and has low risk. And we've seen where, since promotions are very internal focus, there's a lot of safety in being able to experiment there. And specifically, what we've seen with AI is it makes the processes faster without sacrificing fairness. It helps in the decision-making process and having kind of some context and traceability in terms of why decisions were made. It really enforces a culture of continuous improvement and development. And what we've seen, and we'll say a little bit later today, is it really has a clear return on investment. Um, so Jack, just wanted to call on you. Is there anything else you'd add? I know we'll talk more about the specific pilot that you've been doing, but anything else in terms of how you've seen AI used at Castle Rock?
Well, I'd say that I agree with all those points, and I know we'll talk a little later, but the development piece of the tool I think is very important because when individuals go through promotional processes, many times they come out with either being promoted or not, but many times they aren't provided the feedback and the developmental recommendations to go forward. So whether you're promoted or not, it's nice to go through a process and have very specific and accurate feedback so that you can help yourself develop further down the line when you go for the next promotion or just continue to be a good leader within your organization.
Wonderful. Yep, I agree. That's definitely what we've seen as well. And so just a little bit more context. The term AI is being used a lot. We hear it in the news, we hear it online. And so just to provide a little bit more context on some of the different definitions behind AI. So AI can mean a few different things. There's a natural language processing component, which can analyze both written and verbal evaluations and extract meaningful insights. Again, some of that voice-based feedback that we talked about, and also detecting sentiment. Machine learning is a process of helping systems and computer systems improve over time, learning from real world data, adapting to a department's specific needs, even seeing, you know, candidates or through annual evaluations, seeing progress over time and helping officers grow and develop more and more and just being fine-tuned to their needs. And then generative AI, which is a lot of things like ChatGPT and some of the large language models you hear about, is very good at summarizing input from multiple sources, and then kind of creating some recommendations tailored for that individual. So a lot of kind of the AI has been around for many, many years. We've been hearing about it, but a lot of the buzz around it now these days is really around that generative AI piece. And AI provides a lot of advantages in the context of evaluations and promotions. Really, one of the first things is data-driven insights and being able to see some of those patterns that even experienced reviewers might miss, and patterns across a lot of different perspectives. Much like an officer might go into a case to interview a bunch of witnesses to figure out what's going on. AI is very good at connecting some of the dots there. Secondly, it offers a lot of speed and efficiently. What used to take weeks can really be synthesized and simplified and take it just a few hours to process through. AI can reduce bias. There's a lot of human bias that goes into things, and so AI can kind of be a more third-party objective reviewer, and minimize some of that individual bias and groupthink. And then really, it offers a lot of continuous improvement. Really, the more we see departments using it, the better it becomes, the better they learn how to use the systems, and the better the system understands how to best support them. And while AI is great, there are a lot of things that it doesn't do. It doesn't make autonomous decisions. Final promotion choices are always in human hands, and we believe always should be. That's a very important decision, one of the most important decisions that an agency can make. And so that remains with the agency. And it doesn't ignore human context, right? Qualitative feedback is built into some of these AI systems. And so we don't want to lose the nuance that goes into all the richness that from human input. And certainly it's not one size fits all. We really encourage each department to customize some of these AI systems to reflect their local values and agency leadership priorities. And so
So now thinking about using AI, sorry, Michael.
No, go for it.
You have some, are you going on? Yeah. So when thinking about using AI for promotions and evaluations, there are a couple of steps you would think about, but I think I'm gonna ask Bob if he'd like to say a few things. Bob, is Bob still with us? Yeah. Hey Bob, can you chat a little bit about when you were thinking about your promotions and evaluations? You had to do a couple of these things anyway, and then you decided to see if you could use AI as well. You want to chat a little bit about your thought processes in terms of deciding to use this as a tool and what the other things you might use for promotions and evaluations might work with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've already touched kind of on the greater number of data points that you can get by involving the entirety of your staff. And I think in my 44 years in policing, in both large and smaller agencies, what was left out of the traditional promotional process. Generally, there's an oral board. Generally, there's a written test. You crunch the numbers, you create a list, and the chief makes a decision. But what's always been lost from that is any ownership or true input by the totality of the workforce. In our case in Parsons, we're not a large agency. We have 40 staff, but to be able to gather data points on, right now we have 4 candidates that are in the testing process, to be able to get multiple data points from different viewpoints, from peers, supervisors, management, dispatchers, and then bake a cake to give a true representation of what that individual's strengths, weaknesses, potentials are, and then to distill that down into a multi-page report that comes out with a score. But just as Jack was talking about, it also identifies opportunities for growth and mentorship for each one of those candidates. That's really rarely ever been available to law enforcement in promotional testing. The closest might have been, utilizing an assessment center where you would get some level of feedback to the candidate. But those are incredibly time-consuming, human, resource depleting, endeavors to do an assessment center the correct way. This streamlines us. And so far, the feedback I'm getting from my staff who are participating across the board is there was a little apprehension to begin with. It was like, well, this is different. We're going to talk to a computer. What are you talking about? And now that, folks are actually been engaged giving feedback, I've gotten 2 thumbs up across the board from my staff. So it's actually, cops are always a little bit hesitant about, anything new, don't really want to change. We like our comfort zone. But in this case, it's been a win. I'm waiting with bated breath to see the final outcome of the product. But I'm pretty excited. Now, as we had moved into this, to sell it to my management staff, we did a training session, that Police to Peace hosted for them to give them, the nuts and bolts of how this really works. We're still going to use a written test. We're still going to do an oral board. And we're still going to look at performance evaluations. And we've weighted those, 30, 30, 30, and 10 to come up with a final score. So we'll see how that may change. Once we've gone through this first evolution using what I think is a groundbreaking product.
That is a great overview. And so what Bob described essentially is an assessment center that is completely automated, and you talk to a computer and you get your report the next day, not the next year. And so what you mentioned is you had to gather input in order to do it this way, right? Then you needed an AI analysis, right? And using the various aspects of AI that we talked about. Then what you wanted to do was look for trends, right? The system looked for trends rather than the assessment center, right? Which can find consistent strengths or concerns about a candidate. And then you wanted to find leadership indicators. Who was the best candidate, right?
Absolutely.
And AI is a tool that can easily and quickly flag individuals with demonstrated leadership or lack thereof in terms of this process. So it's a really good application of it. Thank you. And what Bob described is, we're going to talk a little bit about, just briefly, a 360 evaluation. And the reason we are is that I come from the private sector. And so a 360 evaluation is a 360 degree around a person, meaning all the stakeholders around someone are asked their opinion or to provide input on that person. And so this is a standard in the private sector, and it has not been used very much in policing. In fact, if we were to take a poll of people here online, I would say that maybe 50% would not have known or have undergone a 360 evaluation. Hey, Jack, have you done that? And Bob, have you done a 360?
Here in Castle Rock.
Had it done on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had at one point had a 360 completed. We had just completed some 360s on some of our team members here that have augmented the annual performance evaluation. So not only did they get their annual performance evaluation, but we use this tool to provide a 360 data input for them. And again, as related to the promotional process, we found it to be extremely accurate, and so did the team member, when they get that feedback. So it's been a wonderful tool. It's easy to use, and it's kind of the cousin to the promotional piece, right? I mean, it's a similar tool, but used for a different reason.
Right, that's exactly right. And I see that Rick Jacobs has joined us. Rick, are you able to come on camera and say hi? Hey there, you are mute.
Yeah, I had a little trouble logging in. I'm a better psychologist than technologist. Sorry about that.
For those of you who don't know Rick, Rick is an esteemed researcher and academic in policing for the last 4 decades, and in particular with his eye on promotions in policing. And Rick, you have actually been very involved with us as we've talked about AI for policing and promotions. And what I highlighted for us, the real value of 360-degree evaluations if they were done in policing. You'd like to talk a little bit about that from your experience?
Sure. One of the things that I did as part of my research was work with police departments all over the country and actually all over the world, talking about selection and promotion systems. And unfortunately, in terms of consulting engagements, the only time I was able to join projects was when there were big projects, really big projects, New York City, Columbus, Ohio, state police in Pennsylvania, Florida, Massachusetts. And I live in Pennsylvania. We have 1,300 police agencies. All of them are small, with the exception of a few. None of them could afford the kinds of systems for promotion that were available to Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and bigger cities. What I see with this process here from Police to Peace is an opportunity for small departments to get all the benefits that these bigger departments got in terms of gathering information about the candidates and gathering valuable information, with the addition that by using 360 information, we're starting to collect something that's very hard to collect in police departments. That is honest appraisals of people. People didn't want to, supervisors didn't want to cause a rift between themselves and their subordinates. And when we ask how everybody's doing, they say, oh, they're all doing fine. Sometimes that was also exacerbated by union agreements. In a union environment, everybody's equal. So the idea of differentiating information becomes problematic. Here, we reach out to people who know each of the candidates. Not in competition with those candidates, we'll eliminate those from the process, but those who interact with them regularly. And they have an opportunity to give us honest appraisals of these people. And since we're collecting it from a lot of different people, from a lot of different perspectives, it's like crowdsourcing. It's putting all that information together to get a really accurate picture of each of the candidates. So I'm excited about this. It would be impossible to do without the AI engine behind it, because we're generating a lot of information, and AI allows us to take a first crack at what might be common from all the different sources, and then build on that in terms of a report that gives us a good picture of the individual. So I'm excited. I see this as the next generation of opportunities for improving the promotion process in law enforcement and more generally in performance appraisals everywhere.
Yeah, let me jump
So
in.
Rick, Oh,
with
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, let me jump on board with what Rick's saying is that, in one of my chief's assignments, I was a university police chief for 6 years, and the university environment uses 360-degree feedback evaluations. They did that for all of our management staff, and that was my first exposure relative to using that in a policing environment. Now, I will tell you the university had the resources, just like Rick was saying. Large organization, they have money, they've got the numbers crunchers, so that it's a valid, process. That's not a resource that small and medium-sized departments, are staffed for or have the expertise on their own to often take advantage of. Where with a product like this, you don't have to be the New Yorks or the Pennsylvanias, state police. You can be, the Parsons and the Castle Rock police departments of the United States and get a product that up until now was unattainable.
And let me add two things to
Yeah.
that, Bob. One of the important things here is that 360s have been done for decades in other environments. I've had 360s done on me. And what's valuable about it is the information it provides. Okay, we can use it for promotion, but importantly, in an environment that believes in this process, we start giving training feedback to each individual. So when I read my first 360, I said, "Oh my God, I know that about myself. I didn't know it was obvious to other people." That was a learning moment for me. That's the kind of training that could go on as people get feedback from the 360, independent of whether we use it for promotion or not. The second thing is that back in 1976, so we're going back a long time. I did my doctoral dissertation. That probably gives away my age, but it was a long time ago. And I did it with the Riverside, California Police Department. And I asked sergeants to rate their subordinates. And then I asked subordinates to rate themselves. And what I found out was the subordinates rated themselves much higher than the sergeants rated those subordinates. And I met with a group of sergeants and I said, "Here's what we find. It's not unusual. What do you think's going on here?" And one of the sergeants said, "I can explain it simply." I said, "Okay." He said, "The officers are reporting what we tell them. We're reporting what we really think." So there's a disconnect between what is being conveyed in a traditional performance appraisal and what is actually going on. And this 360 helps break that down. It might not eliminate it completely, but it helps break that problem down.
Well, and I think too,
You
it
know, Rick,
also,
oh, go ahead, Bob.
well, I was just going to say, I think it also places additional emphasis on the true value of internal customers. Instead of, well, I work with Joe and, I see Sally, but, they're my peers. Suddenly when you start introducing, a 360 model, it's like, well, hold it. They're actually my customers. And maybe I need to, invest as much in them as I do, with, citizens and folks, out in the bigger world.
So, Rick, Bob, Jack, how is this not a popularity contest in terms of feedback? We've gotten that question. Rick first, because I know you do research in this area.
Yeah, one of the things that we do in any of our 360 implementations is we get a list of people who we should solicit. And it could be, I mean, but you're crowdsourcing, you're getting a lot of different information. And there will be some reporters who are very honest and some who are, just cheerleaders. But the most important thing is in the promotion context, we eliminate anybody who's in competition with that person. The model, that not only is it important that I will succeed, but my friends must fail, cannot be operationalized here. That's really important to keep in mind. You cannot have a 360 where competitors are tearing down each other because then you're encouraging disingenuous information.
Right. And Bob, you haven't found that. Jack, you haven't found that. Have you heard the concern that it's a popularity contest?
Well, I know my management team, when we first talked about this several months ago, it was like, "Oh, Chief, come on, this is just going to be a popularity contest. We're going to fill out some forms and, Joe likes Harry and Harry likes, Jim and, what's the value of this?" But once it was explained how the AI process works and the fact that it's interactive, there might be a series of core questions for, the 360, but then, the AI is coming back and challenging and questioning you for more detail and more specifics. So that interactive process, then it's like, well, hold it. I've got to be more specific. I've got to give examples. And I think that was a huge selling point once the first few folks in our department started filling out, and interacting with, the AI. They were like, oh, hold it, this there's a lot more to this.
Right. And Jack, have you found that to be was that a criticism? Have you found that to be the case?
I think that was that's always been a concern in promotional processes, right? It's like, oh, they're just picking
Right.
the person that that they like the most. Actually, I think this takes it out of it, because it's using AI input from a number of people. Our last promotional process, we actually had input on some of our candidates for up to 30 people, peers, supervisors, commanders, and all that input into the report. We were able to get, I mean, the more data you have, the more accurate it is, and we did find it to be very accurate. So I think that those concerns were put to rest very quickly.
Great. That is a great overview. Michael, you want to talk a little bit about tools?
Absolutely. So we'll run through, and thank you guys. Brilliant insight.
That's awesome.
Wow, that was very good. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that we see police agencies using and some that you have access to. The most commonly known one is ChatGPT, which is good at generating summaries and some of the feedback reports. Then we'll talk a little bit more, about navigating hallucinations and things like that. Claude, which is a kind of ChatGPT competitor by a company named Anthropic. It's good for kind of like longer write. It's good at writing and has very good outputs for that. And then Notebook LM by Google, which is a little less known. It's very good at taking lots of context and documents together, but the writing quality is a little bit less. And then some of what we've been talking about today is a tool called Policing Performance 360, which is more focused and purpose-built, that integrates all this feedback that we've been talking about, and uses AI to synthesize that specifically for policing agencies.
Mm-hmm. So let's play a game. Let's imagine that you're chief at an agency and you have an enterprising captain or lieutenant, and they want to use Claude for promotions, right? They've decided to use it, and they could actually do that. How might an enterprising police leader go about that? Well, first, and Rick, we'll ask you to comment on this. You'd have to create a set of structured interview questions, which seems very straightforward, but can actually be a little more difficult. You want to chat a little bit about creating the structured questions that you might enter into or use with any AI engine?
Well, this isn't new. I mean, we do this as professionals all the time, creating these kinds of structured interviews, and I've been doing it since my dissertation with police departments 50 years ago. There is a nice catalog of these kinds of questions that we can access, but more importantly, every police department I've ever worked in wants to put their own touch on questions, and if we and our tool enables the user to not only look at the set of questions that we might propose, but in some way modify those or even add some other ones. So in a way, police departments aren't all created equal. Some of them have specific things that they want to include, and we've tried to build that into the system. But for the most part, nobody would be surprised at looking at the question sets that we recommend. I think they're the same kinds of questions you would ask. And I'll ask Michael to jump in on that because he's the one who does all the magic of creating the templates, and I think that's accurate, isn't it, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. We do see probably 80% overlap depending on rank of kind of like what are the core competencies that agencies will look for, but certainly having that unique flavor and touch, some of the specific values of the agency or the values of the local community, and being able to customize that for that promotion process, we have seen to be, to your point, very important for agencies.
So then you'd have all the questions, right? And you're using Claude or any AI engine, but we're talking about Claude here. You'd have to identify the stakeholders who will be asked to answer those questions. Who are they? Who are the people around the candidate that could evaluate the candidate most? If it's a medium to small agency, it might be the whole agency, and giving people the opportunity to opt out if they don't know them. And then the third thing, you have to solicit feedback. You have to give the stakeholders a way of responding to these questions in a way that is not overwhelming. And as Bob talked about and Rick talked about, these assessment centers, they do that. With that said, it's an incredibly arduous, long, expensive process. What if you were using Claude or something like that, and you could have someone respond by email or fill in a survey or record a voice message and send it to you? This is a way you might use that. The next step is you're going to have to, when the input is collected, you're going to have to transcribe it. So you have to get it into a written format so you could feed it into an AI engine like Claude and ask it to generate summaries of the 360 feedback for your candidates. And then finally, with Claude, in this example, you would ask Claude to draft candidate evaluations based on the structured input of all the evaluations you have collected. And if you went through all of that, you could get to a place where you've just used Claude and AI in order to do your candidate evaluations for promotion.
So we'll talk a little bit. Thanks for the overview, Lisa, especially on Claude. We'll talk a little bit more about ChatGPT. Again, this is probably the most popular and most familiar platform. So it's good at quick adoption and writing things fast. You can compare some of the policies that you have at your agency. It's good at creating these narratives quickly. The one thing that we do see, and there have been a few news articles about using ChatGPT that we've seen in the context of policing, is that sometimes it has hallucinations. And there have been some data privacy and security concerns. Also, in some of the manual work of using a platform like ChatGPT, sometimes that anonymity of who's providing feedback, whoever's synthesizing and pulling that information together, it does have access. And so that anonymity can be lost in terms of that process. And that is something that we see is very important when providing 360 feedback, is to ensure that the feedback is anonymous, so that it's non-attributed. That way people can bring a little bit more candor and honesty when providing that feedback because it's not attributed to them. In addition to Claude and ChatGPT, we'll also bring up NotebookLM, which is by Google. And so Google does a very good job. It's a very data-focused company. And likewise, NotebookLM is very good at taking large quantities of data. So like an agency could take all of their policing reports and dump it in there and get feedback. The challenge we've seen with this is with this platform is the writing could be improved. It sounds a little bit robotic and less human. And so sometimes there's a lack of adoption for that reason. But again, it's very good at all of that kind of large document synthesis. And one fun feature specifically of NotebookLM is that you can bring your docs together and it will actually turn it into something like a 10-minute podcast interview between two AIs. So there's some kind of like novel features included that's pretty fun and entertaining and worth trying.
So now let's talk about another tool, which is called Policing Performance 360. And so basically it's an AI-powered, stakeholder-focused, 360-degree promotability and personal evaluation solution. That's what it was developed at. Full disclosure, it was developed by Michael for Police to Peace, and we've been piloting this tool with agencies around the nation, which is, you've heard a little bit from Jack Hawley of Castle Rock and Bob Spinks from Parsons, Kansas. What we're doing is we're collecting feedback on how well it works and what agencies are using this implementation of AI for and actually using this pilot for. And what we're hoping to find out is, it's not just a better evaluation system to use AI. And we think in particular, Policing Performance 360, it's a mindset shift. It's the mindset shift that Rick talked about in terms of honesty. It's the mindset shift that Jack talked about in terms of using so much feedback that it can't possibly be a popularity contest because you're collecting from so many data points. And so that's what we're looking at in terms of this particular product. And Michael's going to take you through how that product exactly works.
Yeah. So the goal was to model it after what agencies are doing currently, so you can kind of slot it into your existing process without too big a lift. And so step one, just as most agencies do, there's a candidate selection process. And so whatever your standard process is at your agency for identifying and selecting candidates who are up for promotion, same is true here. And then we actually touched on it briefly right before here. Step two is really around that assessment area and figuring out what are the questions, what are the assessment areas that you would like each candidate to be evaluated on. And sometimes that's specific to rank. And certainly we see some of that specific nuance for different agencies and wanting some of that level of customization. And then likewise, there also needs to be a selection of who are the stakeholders or raters, people who are actually going to be the ones providing that feedback. And that can be customized to the individual going through the process, like who are their direct supervisors, peers, and direct reports. It can also be something like Jack and Bob mentioned, which is a larger group. Sometimes at smaller agencies, it can be every member of the agency. And sometimes it can be up to 30, 40 people who have the option to provide feedback. And so that's the stakeholder selection process. And then step three, we actually conduct the 360 assessment. So everything gets uploaded, and then the invites get sent out to everyone via email. They can complete that interactive feedback, having conversation with the AI either via mobile or desktop. So it synthesizes all of that input. And then step four is really collecting all that data, bringing it together, having the AI analyze it, figure out what the different scores are, what are the narratives, what are the key themes that people discussed, and put that together in a report. And then that report, this comprehensive report gets generated for each specific candidate in the promotion process, gets sent to command staff, who are the decision makers. And then that is one of the inputs that ultimately allows command staff and chief to make final decisions on who should be promoted. And this approach, as we've been talking today, isn't just theoretical, but it's a use case in practice, and it's been tested in both private and public sectors. And we've been alluding to this, but thankfully we have Jack on, and we piloted this a while back at Castle Rock, and really the results were eye-opening in how AI could be used to streamline their process. And so, Jack, could you tell us a little bit more about your use of the Policing Performance 360, some of the outcomes, and just your overall experience with it?
Sure. One of the areas that I want to underscore is the fact of you have the ability to customize it to match the values of your department and the culture that you're looking for. So as you promote individuals, you're certainly looking for a particular type of person who's going to align with your values and what you're trying to do as a chief. And so you're able to customize that with the questions that you ask. So yeah, you have the typical leadership types of questions, but what about questions that specifically go to the culture you're trying to build, which is what we were doing here at Castle Rock, building a particular type of culture that's people focused, and we were wanting to test for that. We were wanting to have raters give us input on that. So instead of having individuals sit around a table, give input, and collect that manually, which takes a lot of time, having AI do that for us was very efficient, and it provided us a ton of savings as far as how much it costed to conduct a promotional process. And like I mentioned before, it's very accurate. The outputs are very accurate to the individuals based on our observations as leadership, but based on their observations as well as the candidates going through the process. And I will say that a traditional assessment center typically uses individuals from other agencies that come in. They are provided X amount of a few hours of training, and then they are observing an individual go through some of the testing processes, related to that assessment center, and that's fine information. But what we found is that when you are able to collect data from individuals that have observed these candidates in working live in your organization for months or years, that is very unique data and very specific, and again, very accurate. So, and that's at the end of the day, what we're looking for is accurate information to make the best promotional decisions that we can, and we have found that to be true and at a cost saving. So for us, it was definitely a win-win. I would say that having experienced this now for some time, it would be like going back and saying we're not going to use mobile data computers. We're going back to writing reports, and, which nobody would do. So that's how I would analyze it.
That's great insight. Thank you for sharing, Jack. And then just kind of a continuation on, not only is this about promotability and assessments, but really it's about ongoing development. And Jack, that's something certainly you and I have talked about. And so can you tell us a little bit more about some of the ongoing development implications, how some of that feedback has been turned into changes actual officers and leaders have made, and really kind of how you're using some of this technology and how AI can actually help build some of that leadership pipeline?
Sure. So whether it's the promotional process or the evaluation process, the outcomes are the same as far as what the information this provides, the reports provide to the individual team members. And we have found that these recommendations, they mean a lot. I mean, because they're based on input from a number of people. So, and I think Rick mentioned the fact that, hey, why is there this disconnect between what officers think of themselves and what the supervisors actually provide, in a test environment? And that is because, it's hard for people to give honest feedback to individuals in evaluations. And this tool provides that ability to do that anonymously. And people are very, very honest when it comes to their feedback on their observations. So if you can imagine getting a ton of feedback from your leadership team and your peers, and then having a report that provides that specific information, then provides the recommendations for development. Not only are those great recommendations, but I think people are more apt to listen to those because they know the source of it. It isn't coming from one leader saying, I think you should do this. It's coming from a number of individuals that you work with, peers, leaders as well. So I think it's actually information that people will take without knowing that there may be some bias involved. They know it's raw information and it's good, honest feedback. And my experience with our team has been, yeah, that makes sense. I need to work on that piece of it. And we haven't found anybody to be defensive at all with this information. I think it's because it's providing feedback from so many people.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize that we hear a lot about AI, moving in and taking over the information age. And that's not what's happening here. What AI is doing, it's giving us a tool that allows us to collect a lot of information and organizing it. That information is still coming from the people in your own departments about the people in your own departments. It's not the computer making up information, it's simply organizing it. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is a terrific tool that Michael and Police to Peace have put together to create something that wasn't here before.
Thank you, Rick. Really appreciate that. And yeah, that's really the heart of it, to really enhance the collective wisdom and collective intelligence that already exists within an agency. But sometimes there's not always the vehicle or channel to bring that to sight in a really safe and anonymous way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think to your point, we're not just creating reports to rate candidates. We really do want that ongoing development. So highlighting strengths, flagging areas for improvement, and really giving them a developmental path forward. And over time, this data really does help build a more resilient, trusted, and high-performing organization.
Yeah, on that note, I want to just talk a little bit about Police to Peace. And so Police to Peace, again, a national organization that trains agencies in policing as peace officers. And a product like this that highlights, that promotes resilient, trusted, and high-performing individuals and an organization, it brings the peace officer framework to life. That's what we want. It's not just about who's ready for promotion. It's about creating an entire culture of continuous feedback, personal accountability, and leadership grounded in community trust, whether it's for promotions or whether it's for policies for the agency or whether it's for training. Anything that the agencies do, it's really all the same. And all agencies are about people. So when you promote the best people and you highlight their strengths, you get the best agencies, which is what Police to Peace is all about. Well, if you're excited about AI and promotions, as we are, and we've actually worked with a number of agencies on this, talking about this, if you're ready to explore that, we'd love to talk to you. And in fact, as we mentioned, you could, an enterprising leader at your organization could use a number of AI tools to do this. What we wanted to do, Police to Peace develops great tools for great agencies and make sure that they're scalable for agencies of all sizes, including small agencies. And that's what Policing Performance 360 is. It takes the power of a giant assessment center, combines it with AI, which you may not be familiar with, and turns it into a tool that you can use to promote ranks beginning next week. And just to go over, we've talked about it. It and other tools are AI powered and field tested and budget friendly and transparent and easy to adopt. All of the things that people like about AI are built into Policing Performance 360, and you could use other tools to do that as well. So I have put in the chat a link to more about piloting for Policing Performance 360 for this year, for 2025, because it's such an important thing to do. And Rick, you won't have to tell us your long career as an expert witness in this area, but just smiling and laughing and knowing how that happens all the time. Having a better tool to do promotions really just helps everybody, right? And so we want to pilot this for the year so that we can learn more about how agencies use it, we can make it better, and we're doing pilots with agencies around the country. They're low-cost pilots. They promote 2 or 3 or 4 ranks at the same time, or candidates, and it could give you a taste of how to use AI in your agency and how specifically to use AI for policing promotions.
Well said. Okay, I think we have a few minutes for questions.
I think if there's not a question from from all of the participants, the one that Rick answered was very important. It's not a popularity contest, and the one that Jack said was very important, and that is in fact, Jack or Rick or Bob, if you want to talk about it, the value of honesty in policing agencies regarding promotions and feedback. It's simply not there for all of the reasons that the agency is a command and control agency, and you wouldn't want to say that about your supervisor or your peer for fear of what might happen.
Or
so
even
Jack or Rick or Bob, do you want to chat about that? Or a subordinate, you're
even
right.
your subordinate to break an otherwise good relationship, even though you know there's some deficiencies that they need to learn about. I've always viewed promotional examinations for big departments as both something the department needs to do because they need to move people into positions of higher rank. But more importantly, think about the typical sergeant exam in a department that might have 300 people. 150 people take the promotion exam and 20 get promoted. Why wouldn't, and 130 are disappointed, but why shouldn't all 150 find out more about their performance levels and how they can improve? And that's really what's coming out of this, whether it's for promotion or just for performance evaluation feedback. It's a training opportunity. And it's a relatively inexpensive training opportunity that not enough departments take advantage of by giving honest information back to the candidates.
I totally
That's
agree.
a very good point.
I agree with Rick on that. And, having gone through a number of promotional processes, let's face it, they're stressful. I mean, nobody likes going through them. And if you're going through a promotional process, whether you get promoted or not, you invested a lot of time as an individual going through it, and the organization invested a lot of time. At the minimum, come out with some recommendations as a development tool, because that's very, very important. When I was a young sergeant coming up through the ranks, I had one of my leaders tell me and say, I know the promotional process is coming up, but remember, you start the promotional process the day that you either get hired or the day that you made the next rank. So what's great about this tool is that it's providing that data from a longer time span of behavior and performance versus a small snapshot in time, which some assessment centers do. So that's why I think it's much more accurate.
I would agree. I have to look back. The only time that I remember, over what, 4 decades of truly getting what valid, useful mentoring, guidance, career development feedback. It wasn't sitting taking, multiple choice tests and honestly oral boards, because it was just like, here's a score, thank you very much. Here's a list. This is, who's going to get promoted. It wasn't until, I took my first assessment center, that I really got excited, because I got a multi-page, feedback, with guidance, strengths and things to improve on. And then also being on assessment centers, working with people, it was great to be able to give something more than, well, here's a score to put on the bulletin board and we'll make a decision. Of course, the downside to all of that is the cost, the time, the expertise, the training that goes into truly creating a valid assessment process. And that's huge. And yet what I've seen so far, with Police to Peace and the development of this product is, oh my gosh, I have one-stop shopping where I have, I open up a box, it's self-contained, they're going to walk me through it, and there's validity to what we're doing, and at the end, there's a product to give, each of the people that have gone through the assessment or promotional process, that they walk away with something in their hand going, oh, it's not just, a doggone, written test. It's not that oral board, with two sergeants that, I know never liked me. It is multiple eyes being, baked into that cake that I mentioned earlier. And you walk out with, a good taste in your mouth from eating that cake, because you're getting something positive and some guidance for the future.
Hey,
Yeah,
Lisa.
those are really great points.
Yeah,
Go
this is
ahead. Oh, hi,
Gerald.
Gerald.
Hey, so when I took over Apache Junction had struggled internally with, promotions and things like that. And they had an association that every promotion process became a battle. Like somebody was not happy, they wanted to file the complaint. And so when I took over there, we had a lieutenant's promotional process. And the individual that didn't get it, sure enough, he goes to the city manager, he goes to the mayor and council, makes his complaint. The pressure comes back to me based on past experience. Okay, cancel the process. We're going to relook at it. And I had to work hard to convince my city manager that what we had done was defensible. What I like about this is it can easily show the HR department, it can show the city leaders that, look, this is a well-developed, fair process that is going to be defensible. And that's what I see a big part of the value here.
And building on that, Gerald, we used to say in my consulting office when we'd be called in to review a promotion process or build the one for our client, we would say if you've got 300 candidates and you're promoting 30 people, you've got 270 potential plaintiffs. So let's make this right. And since I've been with Police to Peace going on 2 years now, that's what we've been focused on. Let's make it right. Sure, people will be disappointed, and some of them will gripe about the outcome. But what I've seen, and Jack and Bob, you've used it. I believe it is defensible and it's the right tool.
Well, and I would also make, one comment. I know, across the United States, the different venues, whether it's large, medium, small agencies, whether you're in a strong union state, whether you're in a right to work state, whether you have, civil service commissions versus internal testing, if you need to, advise and consent with a union, to implement something like this. I've been on both sides of that. Half of my life I was in a union. I'm a proud former member of Teamster Local 117 in Seattle. God bless you guys for everything you did for me. And then I've been on the other side as a chief as well. When I was a shop steward, I would have embraced this process because I would have thought, representing, my shop in cohorts, that this has more validity, more protection, and is more useful than a standard paper pencil and sit in front of an oral board process. Period. End of story. Full stop.
That is a great thought to leave on. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, for those of you who will be watching this on recording, we're going to send this to you by email for all of the people who registered. And I want to thank Jack and Bob and Rick and Gerald and Michael and everyone who joined us today to talk a little bit about AI and promotion so that so that policing can become the best it can be all across the nation for all of our officers. So thank you all and have a great day. Stay safe out there.
Be safe,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Here, everyone.